Okay. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to PSYC 8109, Storytelling with Data. My name is Jeremy Manning. I'm a professor of psych and brain sciences at Dartmouth. In addition to teaching courses on memory and data science, I also run a research lab aimed at understanding the brain network dynamics driving how we learn and remember. I'm really excited to meet you all and to be teaching this course again. Some logistics. This term, we're going to have class on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 2:10 to 3:15 p.m. And we'll almost never use our X hours, but for the rare times we do, those are on Thursdays from 1:20 to 2:10 p.m. And then I also hold open office hours on that are by appointment on Tuesdays. My office hours are going to be held over Zoom this term, and you can sign up for a meeting time using the link in our course syllabus, which you can find on Canvas. Hopefully, we'll transition to in-person meetings soon, but for this week, we'll be holding class remotely over Zoom. But when we meet in person, we'll be in Moore Hall, room 302. Several of my household members have autoimmune issues, and so it's particularly important that we are super careful about COVID safety. So just, in terms of what it means for you, in general, it means that I have a pretty low risk tolerance with respect to moving our class meetings to Zoom. And when we do meet in person, it's very important that you all remain in compliance with Dartmouth's testing requirements and that you're vigilant about masking and whatnot. And then, if we're scheduled to meet in person and people aren't following our safety protocols, then I'm going to need to cancel class or move it online. So just want to be clear about that. Relatedly, if you have health concerns of your own, or obviously if you test positive for COVID or you're experiencing any symptoms, then please don't come to class in person, at least. I'm going to record every course meeting, whether it's online or in person. I'll post the recordings online so that you can easily view them. And, judging from past terms and years, I've almost always been able to post the recordings on the same day as our class meetings. So, things will happen pretty quick. And that also means if you need to miss class for non-health reasons, then, you can use the recordings to check in and stay current. I don't take attendance, and there are no participation grades in any of my courses, including this one. I trust you to decide for yourself when it makes sense for you to come to class and to know for yourself the best ways for you to engage with the material. And then let's see what else. Since I'm recording and posting our class meetings online, I understand that some students might have privacy concerns. If you have general concerns, or if you want me to edit out some comment or a segment of the recording, then just let me know. And if you have, private concerns, then the best way for you to do that is to reach out to me by email or, sign up for office hours for me to discuss. Yeah, I'm totally happy to edit videos to, improve your comfort. In addition to editing the video, I want everyone to feel comfortable participating in class, and, whatever other privacy concerns you have, I'll, do my best to address them. Yeah, so I can, in the past, I've cropped out video parts or blocked out parts of the camera view or cut out particular comments. I'm happy to do that. Just let me know what you want. Okay, so I think that covers the like high level logistics of the course. Does anyone have any questions or comments so far on that stuff? Yeah, Allison.
I was looking at the syllabus and it looked like it was the spring 2019 one. Maybe I was looking in the wrong spot. Is there a different syllabus? And if so, where should we look for it?
So the updated syllabus is posted on Canvas. I don't have control over the version that the department posts. So they're probably using the, well, spring 2019 one, but the 2022 version is on Canvas.
You're right. I
yeah.
looked yesterday and it was the old one, and today it is this one. So sorry.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Very proactive. Okay. Yeah, okay. So yeah, great question. Syllabus is important. You should look at it. So with that kind of logistical stuff, let's jump in. So the first thing I want to say is that this is one of my absolute favorite courses to teach. So I just love the content of this course. I think I kind of think of this course as a sort of like data science boot camp. So you're going to leave this term with a toolkit that I think is going to serve you well in whatever career path you choose, where you'll be able to take a look at a really broad range of data sets and then use modern data science tools to like take apart the data set and understand what the data are telling you. And you'll also learn how to communicate your findings efficiently and effectively in a way that's going to be compelling to people, to other people in particular. So if you decide to pursue a career in data science, this is kind of a preview of what you'll do in your like day-to-day life. But even if you go into some unrelated field like medicine or political science or business, whatever, I think you're going to find these skills useful. Just so much of the modern world is about data and understanding data and like communicating complicated ideas in clear and easily digestible ways. Another thing that I really love about this course is that it's so different each time I teach it. So what we cover in the course is going to be driven by your interests and goals. And like students often build off of projects that were developed in previous offerings of the course. And then you'll help build up a foundation for future students. And if you want to, you can even see how your work this term is going to get used by future students. Like if you're excited about some project you do. Another neat aspect of this course is that I've almost always been able to incorporate collaborations with local nonprofit organizations through Dartmouth's Social Impact Practicum program. So I just personally love the idea that data science can be used to improve the world and society. And that really awesome program has provided a convenient and really nice way of facilitating that. So this term, we're set up to do a unit with Vermont's Department of Health. And I'm hoping that'll give us a great opportunity to like put the skills we learn to use in ways that will directly benefit the local community. So we'll talk more about that as we move on in the term. Okay. This course is fundamentally about using data to discover and evaluate truth. So we'll be learning about data science approaches to understanding data sets. And I've kind of organized the course into two main parts. So in the first part, it's basically about getting everyone up to speed. So we'll be building up our data science toolkit and like learning how to tell stories and stories about data. And then in the second part of the course, once everyone's kind of got that toolkit, we're going to apply what you learn in the first part to look at real world data sets and like use data to answer questions and tell stories about really anything you're interested in. So after today's meeting, I'd like you to, so I've posted a link to the materials on Canvas. So, if you wanted today, you could like go through the full course, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But you'll see it's kind of organized into modules. And after today's class, I'd like you to take a look at the videos in the introductory module. That'll kind of outline in more detail how the course is structured and how I'd recommend approaching learning in my course this term. Also, please check out our course syllabus. The other thing the introductory module does is it's going to help get you set up with the tools we'll be using throughout the rest of the course, in addition to Zoom when we meet remotely and Canvas. Yes, Allison. Feel free to, by the way, just to unmute yourselves and jump in. I'm happy to have my monologue interrupted.
Sorry, I was eating. That's why I turned off my camera.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so when you're referring to the modules, you're referring to the GitHub page?
Yeah, let me post a link to that in the Zoom chat here.
I guess I'm not that familiar with GitHub, so I guess I was hoping maybe you could walk us through like how we should use it in addition to Canvas.
Yeah, so for right now, you will get lots of practice working with GitHub as we move on in the course. For now, the way to think about it, let me just pull up the modules. Oops. Okay. So I'll share this link here. Really, for today and for the first couple weeks, just treat this link as any other web page. So it's like you click the links and you read stuff, and that'll open up videos and other readings and that sort of thing. So you don't really have to know the inner workings of GitHub quite yet. As we go on in the course, so like module 3, we will start to learn how to program and use GitHub. And so by the time we get there, we'll talk more about what GitHub is actually doing. But you don't have to understand it to use it for now. It's a great question though. Let's see. So yeah, so I mentioned Zoom, and we're on Zoom now. So just note about remote teaching and in-person teaching. This year is going to be my 3rd time teaching this course during the pandemic. But like before that, I've also taught the course in person for a number of years. So like even though so we'll kind of have to be somewhat flexible in terms of our format as we see how the COVID numbers unfold this term. But the good thing is that this course works really well both in person and over Zoom. And so for this term, I think it'll work well as a hybrid course too. The kind of main new thing that I'm going to be learning how to do effectively this term is to record in-person lectures. I've never done that before. So, I'll do my best. I'm sure we're going to encounter some new challenges, and maybe the first things we try aren't going to work as well, but, we'll do our best. But, whatever the format from day to day, my promise to you is to teach you to the best of my ability this term. And I hope that you're going to approach learning with a similar attitude. And, also, if there's anything I can do to, make your learning experience better or more effective, just reach out and let me know. Okay. All right. Any questions about any of that stuff so far? Cool. Okay. So that's the kind of boring stuff. What I want to focus on for the rest of today is a discussion of, about truth and beliefs and how they're informed by data and stories. So to start off, I want you to think about, like each of you individually, to think about something that you feel like you know with as close as possible to 100% certainty. So like maybe it's something that you feel like so deeply and truly that you like take it totally for granted and you don't think about it much. Or maybe it's something that is like kind of foundational to your mind. So like something you can't stop thinking about. And you know, could be like everything else you do and believe is built on that. And it could be deep, it could be shallow. You know, but the kind of key requirement is it's got to be something you like are as certain as possible is true. All right. So next is the challenging part. Who's willing to share what they're totally certain about? Akia, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yep.
Okay.
I have 10 fingers.
You have 10 fingers.
Mm.
Cool. Yeah. And you can count them. So yeah. And like, where did you learn about numbers?
Probably kindergarten.
You learn to count stuff and you believe like, yeah, like you start with one thing and you add one more thing to it. So okay, yeah. Cool, I like it. Who else? Yeah, Frank.
My truth is that all human beings need oxygen to stay alive.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's kind of morbid. Have you had any counterexamples of that? I guess not if it's 100% sure.
Well, you can hold your breath for a few minutes underwater, but in relatively long term, you're gonna get up the shore and breathe.
And so like you've gone out and taken like, you know, a sample of the air of each environment you've been in and like done mass spectrometry on it, right? Because like, I mean, you can't see oxygen, but wait, you haven't done that? Or yeah.
Not for every environment, but certainly some.
No,
and it's,
oh, yeah?
of course, there's
Wow.
another issue about what oxygen is exactly. Is it something that can cause
it
other
even
materials
real?
to burn, or what exactly what kind of chemical is that? So yeah, it's complicated, but it's kind of a belief that I think is 100% sure correct.
Yeah, and like, have you ever seen an atom or an element? Like, you know, maybe you learned about the periodic table, what oxygen is, but did you get to see it with your eyes, or how'd you come to that?
It comes out of maybe a lot of assumptions that atmospheres around this planet is contain pretty much similar content, and each of them, except for the extreme examples like in a burning house, say around 20% of them is a material that we call oxygen. And although we didn't see this kind of gas directly, we still can observe many of its facts that is closely related to it, like burning, like breathing of animals, like our own breath. And you certainly experience like both as an individual and as an observer to other beings, human or non-human, mammals or non-mammals, and the situation that they need this kind of what we call oxygen versus when they're short of it, and what the consequences are. But yeah, it is built up on a lot of assumptions. I would agree. Maybe there exists theoretically somewhere, some very special individual in some very special environment that just breathing nitrogen and stay alive, but that's not what I assume to be true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I only asked you to come up with something you feel like you know with 100% certainty. So yeah, that's another great example. Who else wants to share?
I could share. I'm
Oh, Emily, yeah.
I'm located on the Dartmouth College campus right now.
Hmm. As opposed to like being a brain in a jar
I don't know.
in the Matrix where it's just all virtual.
Hmm.
Okay. How do you know that?
Dartmouth gave me the key to this room, and I see their map that tells me this is part of the campus area.
Can you observe it now?
Yeah, I can look out the window and see.
You can look out the window. So you're seeing the like projection screen that I set up outside your window.
I guess
It's pretty
so.
nice. Yeah. Yeah, and you might have like a memory of going into that room. Of course, then we have to trust your memory. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So where you're located. Yeah. I mean, the other weird thing is like, we think of our location on the surface of Earth or something like that. But Earth is this like, little piece of dust zooming through space. So like, it's hard to think of a absolute location, but yeah, but Dartmouth is, I guess, moving with the Earth. So cool. Yeah, Fan Rui,
Oh, I'm wearing a mask.
you're wearing a mask.
Yes.
It's not like a Zoom filter.
It's not a filter.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess you can see it through the camera, so you can see yourself. You can feel it.
Yes.
Yeah. So so I like. Well, all these examples are great. I think the 10 fingers example and then wearing a mask, those are both, they both feel different to me because it's like things you can directly observe right now sitting in front of you. It doesn't require making additional observations or I guess maybe it makes assumptions like your visual input is reliable and whatnot, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. What else?
It's 2:29 right now.
The time is 2:29.
Yeah.
I have 2:36, or 2:35. Let's see. Yeah,
wait.
but yeah, but it's 2:39 somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. According to some clock that you have. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, another observable thing. You have to trust that your clock is right, which it seems like there's some disagreement across clocks, and maybe like, time zone information. So time, like defined how you can objectively define time using the speed of light. If, we assume that's constant and physics are right, but we could also say time is what a clock measures. And if a clock says 2:29, maybe that's accurate to some level. Cool. I think, Allison, you had your hand up first. Yeah. Do you wanna...
I guess the thing I was thinking about was like, what if it's like a subjective belief? Because as long as you believe it, like the question was, as long as you believe it's true, right? Because everything everyone said is like more of a fact, but like, I guess what if you gave yourself like a compliment or something? Like, as long as you believe it's true, wouldn't that also fit?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that fits my question. Yeah.
I mean, granted, like your opinion could change, but
yeah. So yeah, do you want to like give a example or like a concrete
I guess like
example?
I was trying to think about like something that's subjective or objective, or kind of what came to mind was I think pre-COVID, I took for granted the fact that I would always be on campus. And then COVID made me appreciate how nice it was to be allowed to be on campus and like appreciate that more and not always prioritize like being abroad or my off terms. So I guess sometimes it's like situational factors, but I guess in that moment to me, it seemed true until other factors proved otherwise.
Yeah. Well, that one definitely resonates with me. I, made a lot of assumptions pre-COVID that turned out not to be, not to hold up over time. But yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So kind of like taking for granted what the constraints of the system you're in are and what the rules are and what you can expect and not expect. It's hard, it can be hard to, both live in the world or the universe or society or community and also be a part of that, but then also so you're like subjected to the laws of physics and interpersonal interactions and all that, but then also stepping outside of that and like observing the rules that are governing your situation or like the game that you're in can be hard to do that. So maybe the belief, so you're saying like the belief is that the system you're in is like 100% stable. And then I guess we saw an example of how that can be shaken, but yeah. Cool. Yeah. Anna Marie, is that
It's Anna Marie.
Anna?
You don't pronounce the J. It's
Okay.
the local way of writing it.
Okay.
Gosh, this is gonna sound horribly pretentious, but I guess I could say that I'm pretty sure that I have a consciousness. I'm not always conscious. Sometimes I spend quite a bit of my time asleep, but I guess it also depends on the definition, but I'm pretty sure that I'm having some kind of thought process right now.
Yeah, like Descartes, I think, therefore I am sort of stuff. And I don't know who's taken like intro philosophy courses, but like the zombie problem, like, do we know other people are conscious? Maybe we could judge for ourselves or think we can. Of course, like our brains are biological machines that are just following the laws of physics. So, I guess that's not mutually exclusive with consciousness, but kind of interesting that it feels like we're making decisions, but it's just physics, right? So, cool. Yeah. Elisa or Eliza, which, or
Elisa.
neither? Yeah. Elisa, okay.
To any action, there exists a reaction.
Yeah, so like Newtonian physics. Yeah, which could
applied also to my reality or whatever happens, my past, my future.
So I guess like, and are you thinking of that as like the movement of matter or like societal interactions or interpersonal interactions or just everything?
It's more like everything.
Everything. So everything has a consequence, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like in the strictest sense that it seems true, like even if you just like move your hand through the air, that's going to disturb some molecules, which are going to like butterfly effect their ways out to, the rest of the universe and have unforeseen or unforeseeable consequences, like kind of chaos theory style. But so maybe
it's a physics principle, but can be applied to whatever happens.
Interesting. One kind of difference from, so that's all these beliefs are like valid and great ideas. One difference with the like with this one is it's a little bit less concrete, right? Because it's like a general rule. Well, I mean, maybe the living in maybe the rules of like our situations are stable. Maybe that's also somewhat general, but it feels different than like if I'm holding a ball and I drop it, it'll fall to the ground and like bounce a few times. It's like, it's more like a, you know, kind of rule of the universe or something like that. Cool. Kareem, yeah.
Going off the objective or subjective point, I was wondering what your take would be on, so if someone said they were diagnosed with a tumor, for example, with 100% certainty, then there's like some backing behind it. But what if someone said that they were diagnosed with like bipolar disorder? Like how would you approach that?
Well, I mean, lots of medical diagnoses, like anything else in science or that we attempt to make sciencey, you know, there's rarely 100% certainty of anything. Yeah, so like the truth to like this person was diagnosed with a tumor, like the truth is they were diagnosed. Whether they have a tumor, that's maybe a, you know, probability thing. And I guess if you like, you know, physically see it or extract the tumor, that could be perhaps observable evidence. You could maybe, like you could take an MRI scan and image it, or an X-ray, and see if you can like physically see it. And, you know, to the extent you trust the machine, then that might give you insights. Of course, you know, I've been, you know, doing MRI research for, you know, I guess at least a decade. Sometimes there are artifacts which are, you know, you can see, I mean, I image the brain. So sometimes you can see like what looks like, you know, strangeness in the brain. And it's just the imager, it's not the actual brain. So if you take another image, it looks fine. You know, just like, you know, sunlight can shine on your camera sensor and make like an image of some landscape look strange, but then when the sun goes behind a cloud, it looks different. Yeah. Cool. Does anyone else want to share? Katie or Alex or Emily? Emily, did you? Oh yeah, you did. You shared you're on Dartmouth, right? You're located at Dartmouth, right?
I was gonna say, we kind of know by now that COVID is real.
Sadly, yeah.
Facts, and we've seen a pattern of people being diagnosed with COVID and then having these respiratory issues or some sort of side effect.
Yeah. Yep. Not even going to try to dispute that one, just for political reasons, maybe. But yeah, that's, yeah, I think COVID's real too. Yeah. How about you, Alex? Did you want to share something?
And for me, the sky is cloudy.
The sky is cloudy. Yeah. So, and can you currently see the sky?
I can, yeah, through my window.
Through your window.
Which
yeah, so it's like, yeah, so it's similar to the I'm on Dartmouth's campus thing. Like, you know, you got to trust what you see out your window. But, you know, probably when you're looking at the computer screen, you're not looking at the sky. But yeah, but if you, as long as you trust your like memory on short time scales, like you look at the window, hold that in your mind, then look back at the computer screen. As long as it's at least accurate on that time scale, then you're kind of good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So like, I mean, I agree with all the statements you all said. So, you know, I'm not gonna like, you know, disrupt your beliefs there. But I think it's a useful exercise to think about what you're certain about and like ask, you know, just examine what your assumptions are. So I guess we already dug into this a little bit, but for those of you who like we haven't yet, I'm wondering if you can think about like how you know those like truths. So like, maybe what's the data aspect? Like, did you observe it with your own senses? Did someone you really trust tell you? Did you get to your, truth through logic, like the Descartes example? Yeah, so like, how did the truth get into your brain, and like, what are its dependencies, if you can identify them? Does anyone want to try to like dissect your belief there?
It seems to me like a lot of these, including my own, require certain definitions of things like cloudiness or what is a finger. Like we have to have agreed upon certain truths in order to be able to say that they are true as a whole.
Yeah, the other, like, in terms of agreeing, I mean, just thinking about what language is, your brain is like basically sitting in a like vat of liquid in your skull, kind of marinating there. And then it's attached to all these sensors. Like when we say you, what that really means is your brain, like you are your brain. So, we get to see each other's like bodies, which are external, but really you are your brain. And your brain is attached to these sensors that take physical things happening in the world and turn them into electrical signals that your brain tries to interpret or make sense of. But that's how you experience the world. You don't get, like, the raw data that comes into your brain is not concepts. It's not language. It's not like, if you'd never interacted with someone, I don't know if you'd learn language. You almost certainly wouldn't learn the languages today if no one had spoken them or signed them to you, whatever language, typed them to you, etc. So what we do when we think about the world through language is like, you take the world, which exists as maybe physical events that are measured by your brain sensors. Then you have to kind of your brain interprets the data, stores it in some like compressed representation. And then when we communicate it to other people, you have to turn your like physical measurements, like the data in your brain, and transmit it wirelessly to someone else's brain by saying words, which are like vibrations in the air if you're using, verbal communication. That gets picked up by someone's auditory system, interpreted as words, and then you have to assume the person you're talking to has their own language representation in their brain they're gonna be able to unpack into something that related to the physical phenomenon that you're describing in the first place. But like, language is separate from the physical thing. Yeah, Anna Marie.
Yeah, I also think that there's like a certain level of pragmatism involved. I hope that's how it's pronounced in English. Because like I might, always go back to the fact that I could be in a simulation, but I'll still look outside the window, to check if it's raining when I go to class, because, it's just, I still have to live in the simulation.
Yeah, so that's another really great point. So you could just, every single thought you have, I mean, I don't think I could do it because it would just take too much discipline, and I don't have it. You could try to rederive everything from first principles, every new thought you have. It would make your thoughts really slow and kind of inefficient, but like, we kind of make assumptions, even if we're just logicking through some problem or like observing something in the world, we interpret it in the context of our, prior assumptions and beliefs, rather than revisiting everything we know from scratch each time we like experience something new. And I think the point about like, you know, assuming you're not in a simulation, well, you might be, but, or we all might be, but like, maybe to make progress, you have to make certain assumptions and you can't just start from scratch every time. That's a great point. Okay. Does anyone else want to comment or take a stab at this? Okay, Allison.
I think what Alex said is true. My family are lawyers, and so once he said that, that made me think of like how sometimes definitions, like how you say something is like could be very specific. And I think it also really depends on the context and the discipline. So depending on what, if you're like in science versus in philosophy, the expectations for how you justify truth differs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and it's certainly true in science too. One of the things I think about a lot, you know, I study the brain at like the level of single individuals. So like the whole brain of, you know, what someone, you know, one person's whole brain. But, you know, the brain is super complicated. You can't rederive or measure everything every time you want to learn something new. And so, you know, so I just make assumptions. And other labs, even at Dartmouth, study parts of brain. So they might, you know, study one particular brain system or like one particular type of neuron or, you know, glial cell in the brain or something like that. And they might spend their whole life discovering something interesting about that circuit that's like different from what my assumptions are going in. And then like the lab studying one neuron and like how a particular type of neuron is interesting in some way could make assumptions about like ion channels or proteins that live on the surface of those neurons. And some other lab, maybe also at Dartmouth or somewhere else, like maybe they study that ion channel and like subtle things about that ion channel are different from what the neuron lab was assuming. And then someone else, you know, another lab could study like, you know, protein folding or, you know, amino acids or something. You can break down like all the way, you know, you could keep breaking things down until, you know, at least subatomic or, you know, quantum particles. And I mean, even, I mean, at that level, our kind of understanding is not complete. So the whole thing is shaky a little bit. But like, then we still have to, at the end of the day, make progress. And so, you know, it's like, if you make these kind of anything we conclude is like, if it's an implicit, you know, what we're saying is like, if you make these assumptions, but we don't typically say that, then, and then you like say whatever you conclude. So it's kind of implied, but we don't tend to say it explicitly. Okay. So, so with those kind of discussion points as a sort of context, the next thing I want you to think about is sometime when you were convinced that your opinion or beliefs were wrong. So it's okay if it's not the like original truth that you were thinking of. But like, if you think of a time when you were convinced that something you really thought was different in reality, like what I'm particularly interested in is like, what did you find compelling or interesting about however you received that argument, whether it was someone talking to you or a book you read or an observation? And like, what do you think are the most effective ways for other people to get to you personally, in terms of like getting you to change your mind about something you feel strongly about? Like, is it even possible? Or like, what sorts of approaches work best? Like, do you want to be like intimidated into believing something? Do you want someone to empathize with you? Just lay out like solid logic, show you something with your senses? What do you find compelling? if you're willing to share, if you could think of like a time when you like thought one thing, something happened to you, and then you changed your mind about it. Yeah, Kia.
Yeah, so when I was little, I used to think, since there were a lot of like all the videos and photographs of the olden days were in like black and white, I used to think that the world was in black and white. So I asked my mom, how did like we get color in the world? And and she told me, what do you mean? And so essentially I learned that the world wasn't in black and white like before the development of like color photography and stuff, based on the logic my mom shared of how would you lose the coloring in the world and how would you like get it back, and essentially also trusting my mom, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really fun example. So like did your mom describe like color sensors in cameras, or like was it like, just we've always like the world has always been the same, and like, this is how it works. It didn't work differently back then, just photographs look different. Like what was the kind of approach there?
Yeah, I think it was a mixture of like saying, me thinking it doesn't make sense, like how would you add color to something that's in black and white? That was like my original question. And then like her saying it's a matter of the equipment rather than the reality. And yeah, that was,
And something about it like must have made sense to you too.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah, I'm trying to, so black and white photographs, or like old movies without sound or something like that. I'm trying to think of like, is there, like if there was a movie made in like, 2022 where like the film was done with like some kind of filter over it. So, it's maybe still color, but like kind of muted colors, or like, tinted red or blue or something, or green. Like the argument there might not, like that the equipment doesn't exist might not hold still, but like from a logic standpoint, we could say like, oh, well, you can explain like which is more likely. It's like, is the world different, or is there this simple mechanical explanation that doesn't require the entire like rules of the universe to change when we make a new invention? So maybe it's getting at like Occam's razor. So like, the simplest, given like two explanations that are equally explanatory, like equally well able to explain something you observe, we should prefer the simpler one. So like possibility one is the world used to be black and white. Possibility two is cameras changed. And like what would need to be true in order for like, color to have worked differently in the past. And maybe that's more complicated than a new type of sensor being invented, or film, I guess. Cool. Yeah. What else? I think Anna Marie, you had your hand up first, and then Frank.
Okay. So like we did quite a bit of probability in my studies before, and then a lot of those problems I want to say have like counterintuitive solutions. Like you wouldn't imagine getting those numbers when you first see the problem, but what really helps me is just like, kind of deriving all of the formulas, putting in the numbers, and just doing it step by step.
Yeah, that's a great example. Has everyone heard of the Monty Hall problem? It's like a classic weird probability perception thing. So, well, it's like I can just describe it quickly. You could also Wikipedia it, but pretend you're in a game show and you've got 3 doors that you have to choose between. One of them has a car behind it. You want to win the new car, and the other 2 have nothing. So, the game show host says, pick one of the 3 doors. And so you do. They don't open it. And then the game show host opens one of the other doors and there's nothing behind it. And now the question is, do you want to stick with your original selection or change to the unopened door that you're not standing in front of? And yeah, so just since we only have a few minutes left, so I want to just cut to the counterintuitive thing. It's worth like Wikipediaing this because it's not intuitive, but you'd think, at least I would think naively, that it shouldn't matter whether you switch or not. You have like a 1 out of 3 chance of getting the car. But in reality, you have a bigger chance of winning the car if you switch to the unopened door that you hadn't selected first. There are probability explanations for that. Another kind of intuitive way to think about it is like, how much information do you have about where the car is? And when you first made your selection, it could be any of the 3. So your chances are like 1 out of 3. When you make your new selection after the game show host opens one of the door, now you're selecting 1 out of 2. So, you've gotten more information by a new door being opened. Anyways, yeah, I've never found that intuitive, but it is the case. Yeah, but you kind of have to logic through it and think what would be convincing. And when your intuitions are proved wrong, that's big. Okay. Frank, sorry. Yeah.
Could I interrupt you? I don't know
of course.
if I could.
Yes. Yeah.
I have a comment on what you previously said. How can you consider progress models that are constructed on not true assumptions? So if we don't know whether an assumption is true, how can we consider that progress?
Oh, that's such a great question. There's a famous statistician from the 60s, George Box, who has this amazing quote that like all models are wrong, but some are useful. And like what it means is that every model you could possibly build, well, not possibly build, any model we do build is going to be flawed or imperfect in some way. And in fact, that's kind of the goal of a model. If you if you tried to build a model that was a perfect replica of the whole universe, it would be as complicated as the universe. So what would you already have a universe, you're living in it. So you could, it would be at least as complicated to understand as the universe is. It doesn't simplify or explain. But, so you have to simplify, and that requires making assumptions about how you should simplify when you build a model. And sometimes that is useful because it helps us to understand kind of unintuitive logic or like emergent properties of some complicated system that aren't necessarily obvious from, where we started. And that can be useful even if the assumptions that the model is built on are like either shaky or just like verifiably wrong.
So the initial question that you actually asked, the truth, so it doesn't exist. So we are not trying to get the truth. We're trying to just to tell what we think is the truth. Because at this point, we are not chasing the truth, right?
Well, the way I think about truth is that there is no objective truth, because defining that is difficult. The way I think about truth is it's like what people find compelling. So truth can change over time. It's not a law of the universe. It's just, from a psychological perspective and like a somewhat cynical perspective, it's like truth is what other people believe. So it's not like something you can dig up, like a treasure that you can find or discover or locate. It's like an argument that you make to other people. Yeah, kind of depressing in a way, but maybe practical. Okay, so we're almost out of time. So I want to just say a few more things. So from a data science perspective, knowledge has to come from data. And there are many ways to interpret data that could lead us to different conclusions. So like even a data-driven approach to truth is still going to have flaws and problems. And there's also an additional complication, just like we can't perfectly model anything, or if we tried to, it kind of wouldn't get us where we wanted to anyway. The tools that we use to collect data are also necessarily kind of impoverished and imperfect and incomplete. So like in the extreme sense, like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle says like there are limits on what we can know at a particular point in time about like, fundamental particles, but it also holds true for like any measurement that we take or any data that we collect. And like one way to think about it is when we're measuring physical properties of the external world, there's no way that we can possibly cram every bit of information about the thing we're measuring into a manageably small set of numbers. So like, you could measure the length and width of a table, but you're unlikely, and like that might be something you do if you're interested in furniture or like rearranging your house or something like that, but you're not going to be likely to collect like molecule scale information about the structure of the table, or like even you might not even collect higher level information like whether the table's like wood or stone or what color it is, or like what your whether your significant other likes how it looks or whatever. And physical properties are often the easiest thing for us to characterize and measure. So if you were to collect data about people's beliefs or feelings, the best you could possibly hope for would be their own descriptions and self-reports. But, that's going to necessarily be missing something. So like, you're not, by asking someone whether like how happy they are on a scale of 1 to 10, there's no way you can like get at a complete model of their brain and like recordings of every neuron that they're doing in each moment, maybe even going back throughout their entire life, like that might be useful for really understanding what they mean. So, we collect impoverished data, and then like storing a data set, like, what every neuron in the brain was doing at every moment of your life would also be like beyond anything close to our capacity, and like interpreting it would be a total nightmare. So like, that's one side. But then on the flip side, even though our data sets are always going to be incomplete, we are kind of living in, the age of big data. So huge companies like Facebook, or I guess Meta now, and Google and Apple and Microsoft and Amazon, all these companies are collecting huge amounts of data about billions of people. So like on the scale of all of humanity. And at that scale, it starts to become possible to actually measure like the state of the entire population of Earth, rather than like trying to use summary statistics or like, statistical techniques for drawing inferences based on limited samples. So it's worth, thinking about, as we're getting into and starting to think about data science, like, what do you think the strengths and weaknesses are of data? And like, are data-driven approaches the right way to learn about the world? Are there better ways? What can and or can't we know about data? And like, are those limitations surmountable, maybe through technological advances? Or are there some things we just can't ever know or learn? So, things to think about. Okay, so I want you to like continue to think about this stuff. As you're working through module 1 of the course, and as you're doing that, you're going to be learning from some of the world's best storytellers at Pixar about how to tell effective stories. So as you're watching those videos, they're pretty quick. Think about how you might use elements of effective storytelling to structure effective arguments, or even thinking down the road, how you could use those ideas to formulate effective questions about data. So what we're going to do on Friday is first of all, talk about questions and comments and ideas from that module 1 material. And then also on Friday, so your first assignment, sorry, Emily, yes.
I just had a quick question about your module 1. So for Friday, we should do the introduction module and all of module 1 or part of module 1.
So I just want you to, start going through the material. So the videos are pretty quick. They're each 2 to 3 minutes. So it's not too much.
Is there a certain day we should try to be completely done with module 1 by?
I mean, I'm not gonna do an exam or a quiz.
Just you recommend.
It's useful stuff for thinking about how to tell effective stories. So, I mean, if you see some video and you're like, yeah, this isn't speaking to me, then, I mean, I don't care if you watch it, but I think they're useful. So that's why I posted them. But what we're going to do on Friday, so your first assignment is going to be telling a story about something. It doesn't have to be about data. It can be true or fake, something totally made up. It can be a fantasy. It can be kind of pseudo real. And the other thing we're going to do on Friday is workshop some of your story ideas. So what I'd like you to do for Friday, in addition to after you've gone through the material, is jot down some ideas, and they can be pretty loosely formed. So they don't have to be solid. You could come in with 3 ideas or oh, I sort of want to do a fantasy story, but I don't know how it's going to work. And then we'll workshop as many of the ideas as we can get through. And then the way you're going to tell your stories is by making a 5-minute YouTube video about telling your story. So if you click on assignment 1, that'll kind of walk you through the process. And I'm hoping we'll be able to talk about the stories on Monday. So I guess the class after Friday, but we'll see how the workshopping goes before we finalize that. So that'll kind of, the goal is to give you some practice telling stories about things you're already comfortable talking about without being bogged down by new data science concepts that we're going to get to later in the course. And then, as we move forward, we'll add data in. Allison, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, are there any certain topics you would tell us or if it's about us versus someone else that are better to do?
Nope, it can be about anyone. It can be a real or fake story about you. I guess the one requirement is you're going to be sharing it with the class. So you want it to be something that you're comfortable sharing with the class. But yeah, it can be totally made up. It can be funny. It can be serious. It can be sad. It can be happy. Just, yeah, kind of have fun with it. And, we want to think about what makes an effective story, which stories kind of impacted you. And also, it's intended to kind of introduce you to storytelling. And then we'll think about which stories are effective and which are not effective. The other thing that hopefully will help reduce your anxiety if you're stressed out about this is every assignment in this class is fully redoable at any point up until midnight on the last class meeting. So feel free to experiment and totally bomb. We'll talk about it. And you're going to do fine grade-wise. So, I mean, you don't have to redo assignments. Even if you bomb, you'll probably honestly still do fine. But I want you to like feel comfortable experimenting and trying something weird or, out of your comfort zone. And, the point is to learn. So it's okay if it doesn't work or if some tack you try is just not effective. And, we won't judge anyone personally for telling a bad story. Like I've told many bad stories and many good stories. So, it'll work out. And I'm sure each of you also will tell good and bad stories over the term. That happens every term. So, all right, cool. Well, great to meet you all. And we are 8 minutes past out of time. Thank you for bearing with me, and I will see you all on Friday, also over Zoom. All right, take care, everyone.